Welcome to Scramble Game Show. As always, we like to invite a guest to our show, and today we are very fortunate. We have a very distinguished guest, a judge of Somers Town, Judge Michael McDermott.
Thank you, Doctor.
Michael,
thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us. You know, it's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We probably have not had a judge in our show before, and we always like to invite local dignitaries to our show to tell our town folks, and particularly children, what's going on in our town, okay?
Well, I'll be happy to share anything I can to assist that.
Right. Well, first let me ask you a few personal questions, and so you introduced to our audience, okay? And I know you have served many positions in different local courts, and from city, New York City, Yonkers, to Somers. But I think the main thing we would like to sort of learn from you is how is the local judge, okay, sort of really evolved, or is it purely voluntary work, or there's a career path, or how people really select, to serve as a judge, okay? So that is the main theme that we would like to sort of cover.
Well, if I can explain, there are several layers of courts within New York State. The highest courts are the appellate courts. Court of Appeals is the highest.
Yes.
The appellate division is the mid-level.
Yep.
And then there's what's known as the Supreme Court.
Right.
In other states, the Supreme Court is the highest court. Mm-hmm. But in New York, the Supreme Court is the trial level court for most of the civil cases. Certainly the ones of great magnitude, of great money damages, millions of dollars, those are cases tried in the Supreme Court.
And the people directly go to Supreme Court when it comes to civil
Well, generally
disputes.
the Supreme Courts are the cases where attorneys represent the parties. Very rarely will you find someone who's pro se, someone who represents themselves in a Supreme Court action.
Right.
Then you have what's known as county court.
Right.
Okay? And the Supreme Court, just to back up, Supreme Court is it's a level of the courts that is across New York State. Within each county, you have county court. That's generally where the felonies are tried. Someone's accused of murder, goes on trial for murder. They're tried in the county court.
Right.
Each of the cities, White Plains, Peekskill, New Rochelle, Mount Vernon, they have what's known as city courts.
Right.
And they are similar to Supreme Court. The jurisdictional limit is within the
City.
It's still within the county, but it's a much lower monetary amount than the Supreme Court. All of the rest of the towns and villages in New York State each have what's known as a justice court. Each town and village must by statute have 2 town and village justices. I am one of the town and I'm one of the town judges in Somers. These are elected positions. The term is 4 years, and I've been sitting as a justice court in Somers for the past 9 years. I was recently elected. I was re-elected last year.
I see. Okay, so this is an elected position, so actually does take a little bit of effort to get elected, right?
Well, like you go through every election, like any other election, you have to stand for election by the people of Somers. They hopefully they know my body of work and know the work I do in justice court, and thankfully I was re-elected last year by a large margin.
Yes, that's very good. Before we get into your sort of duties as a local judge, let me ask you a little bit about, backtrack your history. How did you sort of start a law practice? Of course, you become a lawyer. You practice in your private law firm first.
Well, I've been a lawyer for 25 years, and I'm happy to say that I'm partnered with my wife, who's also a lawyer. We have a practice right in Somers, and she's the managing partner. It's easy that way.
Right. Somebody has to manage.
She's the boss. It's easy to say that. She's one of the smartest people I know, so I'm happy to have her as my partner. I've always wanted to be a lawyer since I was a small child. And when I got to become a lawyer, I understood more of what lawyers do, and I saw what judges do, and I always wanted to be a judge as well. So when I moved to Somers 15 years ago, I understood that there was a judge in town. There were two judges, and I knew eventually I would probably run for that position. But I wanted to give something to the community first, so I was appointed to the planning board in Somers. I was on the planning board for about 6 years.
I see.
And when an opportunity arose for me to run, I ran and I was elected. So I was elected and I was reelected twice.
I see. So before that, you served on other courts. What, you know?
Well, no, I've since being a judge in Somers, I've been invited to sit as a visiting judge.
I see.
In the city courts in Mount Vernon, Peekskill, New Rochelle, Mount Vernon, and sometimes judges in those cities through scheduling problems they don't have judges. So I get a call from the administrative judge of the district asking me to sit as a acting city court judge for a day or a week, depending upon what the need is.
So this probably is a practice that towns help each other out in that way.
Well, as an example, just to backtrack a little bit about the justice courts, all justice courts have what's known as a criminal calendar, a civil calendar,
Right.
as well as a vehicle and traffic calendar.
Right.
Anyone who's arrested for anything in Somers, whether it be murder down to disorderly conduct, comes to the justice court first.
Right.
The judge will arraign the person. If it eventually is indicted by the grand jury, it will then be transferred to the county court. Until that time, it stays in the justice court. If there's a misdemeanor, it always stays in justice court. The justice court will have criminal trials, could be misdemeanor, it could be jury trials or judge trials. We also have a civil calendar where the jurisdictional limit is up to $3,000. That is frequently where you see people who are pro se,
Yes.
who do not have attorneys, come into the justice court. Then, of course, we have the vehicle and traffic calendar, people charged with speeding, other types of offenses.
Yeah, speaking about that, actually, for this pro se type of activity, I actually learned a case personally in the local justice civil court. I had a tenant that didn't pay rent for several months and just accumulated, and I did not know this limit of $3,000 as the limit, and since the debt was more than that, when I filed this case and then went to the court, I get thrown out. Judge says, you are over the limit. So I learned firsthand. I said, wow, you got to know,
Well,
what it
in addition to the civil calendar, we have a landlord-tenant.
Right.
You go into other towns or villages in Westchester County, and there'll be a very large calendar of landlord-tenant. In Somers, there's not a large battery of cases where people are landlord-tenant. There are some, but not as many as other towns or villages.
Right. Well, actually, I think Somers is a very nice town. We have very sort of a good environment, and we don't have much crime and so forth. So in your case, what sort of interesting things that do go through your justice?
Well, I have to say that just as you said, Somers is still it's a pristine place to live. I've been living there for 15 years. I have 4 boys that are in the school system. My boys' ages are 15, 12, and 9-year-old twins.
Right.
So I'm quite aware.
So the twins are in
5th grade.
Middle school?
In SIS.
Oh, SIS,
Somers
going
Intermediate
to
School.
middle school. I see.
Then my 12-year-old is in 7th grade in the middle school,
Yeah.
and my 15-year-old is, of course, in the high
High
school.
school, yeah.
So when young people come into my court charged with a variety of type of offenses, I'm very much attuned to the challenges that young people face today because I deal with it at home. I can imagine young people come into my court, issues dealing with drugs, speeding, a variety of different things. Thankfully, I have not had that challenge in my own home, but my children are still relatively young compared to that. So, but I'm sensitive.
So those are the main cases that.
Well, for young people, I would say the predominant reason young people come into my court, speeding. They have what's known as a junior license that they instituted a couple of years ago. It's a New York State junior license where you can get it when you're 16 if you've had driver ed, 17 without. But there are restrictions on when you can drive. Speeding is a dangerous thing.
Yes.
And we recently, the Somers High School introduced a program that in order to get a parking pass at the high school, they have to attend a 3-hour course at the high school, which I attended as a speaker.
Yeah.
It was very graphic. It was a terrific program where I had a man came whose daughter was killed by a drunk driver.
Yes.
And he showed a presentation. There was a movie shown to all the students that was there as to the dangers of drunk driving, speeding, a variety of different things.
Yeah, those things are very, very helpful. I personally experienced this DWI sort of a test drive that they brought in a big van to school and let people sort of test drive. What happened when you're really intoxicated under the alcohol influence? And it's very, very impressive.
Well, listen, you get someone who's 17, 18, 19 years old, they believe they're invulnerable.
Yeah.
It's a very common thing. You were 17, 18, 19. I was that age, and I'm not so old that I don't remember what it's like. But it is a more complicated world that we live in today, much more dangerous in many respects. And the police, of course, are doing a terrific job of focusing in on those areas in town where the speeders most likely are going to go. Route 100, Mayapack Avenue, Lovell Street.
Yes.
These are areas that it's a straight run, and it's possible for someone to not even realize how fast they're going. So these are the areas that they try to.
Well, certainly, still we are much better.
Of course.
Compared to, say, people in Yonkers, and you hear that all the time. There's a drag race on the Central Park Avenue or something. It's sort of a dangerous.
Well, it's interesting. I've had a number of young people who come through my court, and I could tell you a few stories of young kids, young men, young women, who came in really a very desperate state. And being the father of 4 young boys, I spend time with them. I'm fortunate that I have my own children, because when I sit down with a young person in my court who's charged with a serious offense, certainly the person has to be punished if they're found guilty. But there's many forms of punishment that can take place. I don't believe in punishment for punishment's sake, but punishment to help them learn and educate themselves so they can continue.
So what sort of typical punishment that we...
Well, it's interesting. The first question that I ask is, where are you in school? It's amazing in this day and age that we have young people who still drop out of high school.
Oh.
Not as many as it used to be, but every once in a while I find someone who comes into my court charged with a serious offense, and
it's not in school.
was not in school for a variety of reasons, one of which they dropped out or got kicked out. The first thing that I'm going to ask them to do is get a GED. This way, at least they'll have a high school diploma. As they get older and have a family, they will at least have that high school diploma. Certainly, a high school diploma is not what it was 30 years ago. But as I tell people, if they want to become a civil servant, a policeman, or fireman, they must have an associate's degree.
Right.
You cannot get an associate's degree unless you have a high school diploma. So at least it'll give them the leg up that they would otherwise not have had.
In your experience, what do you think is the fundamental reason that for kids sort of drop out of school? Is it really family's problem, or is the young people themselves, or the schools?
It's very difficult to state a reason. The reasons are probably the same as they were 10, 20, 30 years ago. You have young kids who have associated themselves with a bad influence. they have themselves addicted to drugs or alcohol or internet. They become huge distractions. Unfortunately, and I say this because I grew up in a very close family, most of the problems that exist do stem from family issues. It's very rare that I see a young man or young woman come into my court charged with an offense, and the parents have no idea as to what caused it. So that's why I like to spend time with the young people and the families, because more often than not, I can get to the bottom of it.
Yes.
Find out why this young person is charged with these offenses, and of course, trying to find the right kind of program to get the person back in.
So the justice really goes a little bit beyond the law book, so to speak.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I had a great pleasure about 2 weeks ago walking through Grand Central, and a young man in a suit approached me and knew me as Judge McDermott. And he looked familiar, and after a couple of seconds, I knew who he was. And he had been in my court, charged with a very serious offense. But through the efforts of his family, which is paramount, and some of the programs I was able to help him get into, he managed to straighten his life out. And now he works for a very important company.
Very good.
So
yeah.
I never like to think that anyone is beyond help, because frequently, at times, young people, they get into offenses, they commit crimes. At times, there's a cry for help. They want the attention, they need the attention, and subconsciously they probably feel, if I do this, I will get the attention, sometimes negative attention. But more importantly, they've come into my court, charged with an offense. I sit down with them, I talk to them. I was a prosecutor in New York City for 6 years when I first got out of law school. I've seen more in that end than most people in Somers could ever imagine. I prosecuted many types of offenses, narcotics, homicides, gunpoint robberies, rapes. I've seen it all. If I sit down with a young person, I can talk to them, I can figure out what the problem is. The hard part is getting the right kind of help.
Good. This sounds very interesting. This is really noble work you're doing. I want to ask you a question. You know, we have so many TV shows on lawyers and courts and so on, and which is good because many people actually watch them and enjoy them. The only thing that I would like to sort of, maybe you could help us is, how do you really interpret these things? Are they sometimes over, dramatized, or
they're TV shows? They believe me, if you were to broadcast on, of course, the O.J. Simpson trial was broadcast on national television, had a record attendance, but that was a special type of case. If you were to take the garden variety trial that's in Supreme Court or county court and broadcast it on television, it would probably be turned off in a couple of seconds. No one would watch. It's a fairly dry and fairly procedural. So when you have a Law and Order, CSI, most of it is condensed to an hour for dramatic effect.
Right. So in that case, then perhaps you could sort of advise the young people, if they are interested in practicing law or become associates of law, how would they, sort of go about and have the right sort of understanding of this profession?
I tell people that the justice court, any court for that matter, is open to the public.
Right.
Anyone can come in, sit in the courtroom, watch every proceeding that's permitted. There are special proceedings that are not, usually because the person is under a certain age, what's called a youthful offender. But 99% of the cases that are any trials being conducted, any hearings, they're open to the public. And I avail myself of many types of organizations and young people to sit down and talk to them about careers as a lawyer, careers in law enforcement, a variety of different areas. The more information people have helps to dispel any misconceptions they may have they got from television. I mean, I cringe at times, being a former prosecutor and being a judge, I cringe at times watching some of these law shows. I go, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that. But that's what gets ratings. Right. People think that, oh, he didn't get his Miranda rights, so the case is dismissed. That's not so. Miranda rights is only a very small part of the rights that a defendant is going to have.
So definitely for people interested in law, they are academic requirements that to accomplish, right? So
Well,
what do you will advise kids today, say starting from young, besides watching TV course shows?
Well, the best example that I could possibly, the best suggestion that I could give to people is read.
You're reading.
Just read. The more you read, the more information you have,
Right.
of a variety of topics. There have been tremendous biographies, autobiographies by some great leaders. Going back to the founding fathers, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, of course, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, all these great leaders, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, all these great leaders had a life.
Yeah.
And understanding the challenges that they faced in their life. FDR is a classic example. Contracted polio when he was in his 20s. All these people faced challenges.
Right.
And even for my own life, I think of the challenges that I face with the raising 4 boys. All these people faced the challenges successfully.
Right.
The more information you can get about the way people have overcome these challenges in life,
Yes.
understand any challenges they may face are surmountable.
Yeah, there's a really wealth of knowledge there.
Absolutely.
It's almost like you are living several lives before you sort of take your real one, right?
That's
if
exactly
you can read the biography of these famous people, not famous in the sense successful people, that their lives become your sort of
Absolutely. I mean, think of it's. I don't want to get off the topic a little bit, but thinking of the challenges the founding fathers made, they did not know whether or not the American Revolution would be successful.
Right.
They all fully expected that if they lost the revolution, they would be
prison.
hung. Prison hung. They would be hung as prisoners.
Right.
So the chance they took, but they believed in the cause well enough, they were willing to take that chance.
Right.
And that's important. Abraham Lincoln is my personal hero. He's one of the reasons why I wanted to become a lawyer, because I saw what he was able to accomplish as a lawyer and then as president in dealing with the slavery issue. And I grew up in the 60s, and I remember the Great Society from LBJ of what was able to be accomplished. And this is all a lot of lawyers that were able to push it
Yeah,
together.
there's certainly a lot of successful people do have law sort of a background. At least a lawyer can enter into many different sort of a profession.
Well, to be people, as far as going to law schools will take you under any major. You can
Right.
have been a music major,
Yes.
economics, art, history. I was a history and economics major. I was a double major.
Right.
I was knowing
Oh, yeah,
one
sure. Even engineer, they can
engineer,
go into
absolutely.
law, yeah.
Well, engineering can be very important because if you want to become a patent lawyer,
For example, yeah.
engineering is a tremendous background for that.
Right.
If you want to become a medical malpractice lawyer, where you want to sue for injuries occurred by a doctor, having a background in medicine, such as a nurse,
Right.
is very
Very
great.
helpful, yeah.
That's right. I was an assistant DA when I first got out of law school. I tried many types of cases, many felonies to verdict. But I took that experience as a lawyer and translated it into a civil practice where I don't represent defendants necessarily, but the trial experience that I had, I bring now, and of course it's very helpful to me now as a judge.
Yeah.
So since we tried criminal cases in my court.
Yeah, it's interesting. You say you have 4 boys, and I have 4 boys. And in fact, I have one in SIS, one in middle school, and one in high school. One just went to college. So raising boys certainly is very different. Although I don't have the direct comparison, but I haven't been told enough that it's very different.
Well, I grew up with 4 sisters.
So you have some
I had 4
personal
I grew up
experience
with
in
4 sisters and 1 bathroom in the Bronx.
Right.
So, but me and my sisters are very close, of course.
Yeah.
And the challenges that children face today
Yeah.
are so much more different than the challenges that we faced at their age. I think the number one concern that I have, particularly with my boys, is the internet. There are the world is open to them,
Yes.
which is a good thing. It gives you access to many, many things we only dreamt of as
Right,
children.
right.
Unfortunately, with that comes a lot of danger.
Yes,
You have-
that's the problem. Yeah. How do you really? There's no way actually to police the internet in a sense, even in family, because there, as you say, there are too many good things you want the children to expose to, but there is the parts that you don't like to have them exposed to. So it's very hard to sort of manage that.
When I was growing up in the Bronx, my dad used to ask me who my friends were. And I never understood why it was so important.
Yeah.
I would tell him who my friends are, and he knew my friends. I never understood why until I became a father.
Yeah.
Now I ask my boys, who are
Yes.
your friends?
Very good. That's exactly. I share the same opinion. You just have to know, who they are, sort of.
Chances are, if your
dealing with,
children's
yeah.
friends are decent people or good boys or girls, and you could tell right away what type of children
Right.
they are, and chances are that your son or daughter will be of the same kind.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question. You are, as a judge, I'm sure you have many cases you can relate to. Is that I personally believe the first offense, okay, of anything, is the most critical one that you really want to sort of prevent if possible, or dealing it correctly, as much as possible, because after that, it could be much more difficult. It could be really a downhill slide and so on. Do you share with me on this? Is it the first one is very critical, therefore the parents really have to be on top of that?
Well, parents have to be on top and know what type of activities that your son and daughter is involved with. I do occasionally have a young person, a young man or boy or girl, who comes in charged with speeding. And if the parents don't come to court, I ask where the parents are. And sometimes the young person will say, oh, they're home. So I make the parents come back to court.
That's good.
Because I
Yes,
want
they really have to be.
because I want the parent to understand
Yeah.
this is a serious matter
Right.
and not one to be taken lightly.
Yes.
In addition to the fact that chances are the parent, the person is still under the parent's insurance, and the parents have a right to participate in the process.
Right.
If it's going to be tried or dismissed, or if there's going to be a disposition, a plea to a lesser charge with a fine, the parents have a right to know that. But more importantly, I do get young people come in, and I ask them, where are you in school?
Yes.
Are you in school? And even if it's in a traffic offense, if they've dropped out of school, I want to know why. If it's if it's financial, let's see if we can help them out.
Yeah, I think this is exactly what I feel, that if parents really have to care, particularly whatever it is, even the first lie people tells, I think it's more important than anything else. Yeah.
Well, I mean, having these young people come into court, hopefully their first offense is not a serious drug case or a DWI case.
Right.
But hopefully, I'm certainly not looking to whitewash it for the sake because it's the first offense. But at the same time, if they are engaging in that kind of activity, maybe they had their first breaks already.
Right.
And now this is farther on the road than necessary.
Well, Judge McDermott, when you have a good conversation, time flies. Believe me or not, half an hour is gone.
Oh.
I certainly would like to invite you back, and in fact, we might invite Mrs. Back to our show also.
My wife is the vice president of the library board in Somers, so I'm
good.
sure
We should.
She would have a lot to say about the library.
Yeah, this is true. So today we unfortunately have to close our show, but we definitely will invite you back again. And I thank you for your
well, thank you for your time, and this is a wonderful program.
This is very good.
I wish you great success with it.
Thank you. Thank you
Okay,
very
Doctor,
much.
thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, We had a very good conversation with our Somers Town Judge Michael McDermott, and as you know that Somers is a quiet town. However, no matter how quiet a town, there are still cases that go through the justice court, and through this conversation I hope you have a little understanding about what the town justice does and why we have the local courts. Now, we will turn ourselves now to the game show, and stay tuned. All right, we will make a little announcement today. Our show will be on throughout November and December, except holidays. We produce the show every Friday from 4 o'clock to 6 or 4:30 to 6:30. So if you're interested in joining our show, just give us a ring or send me an email, and we will schedule you. And the game show typically is playing Scramble games or many other versions of games that we can play in the studio. Now, also I'd like to inform you that the Scramble games has been now introduced in 2 schools as after-school program along with the Scrabble. And this is very interesting. As we often said, the Scramble games can help people become great Scrabble players, because the speed that you pick up the vocabulary, the way that make you think, really makes the game, makes the sort of Scrabble game easy after you gone through Scramble training. So this after-school program now is at SIS. We have it on Monday. We also have this at Fumar Elementary School in Mayapack on Wednesday. Now, each club now has quite a number of